Growing up, my gaming PC wasn't just a machine. It was my fortress, my workshop, and the only quiet place I had in a house where even silence felt like it belonged to someone else. My name is Marina Calloway. I was 22, and in my family, being the youngest daughter meant learning early that your things were never fully yours if someone louder decided they needed them more. My room was small, squeezed between the hallway bathroom and the linen closet, but in the far corner, between a crooked bookshelf and a window that rattled every time the wind picked up, I had built something that felt like proof I existed. My custom PC wasn't flashy. No glowing rainbow lights, no glass case that looked like a spaceship, nothing dramatic. But every part inside it had a story. The graphics card came from 3 months of weekend shifts at the electronics store. The SSD came after I skipped takeout for almost an entire summer. The mechanical keyboard cost me 2 months of ramen dinners and pretending I wasn't hungry when my coworkers ordered lunch. That computer held everything. My college applications, my music files, a half-finished indie game I was coding with my friend Aaron. Notes, passwords, designs, little pieces of a future I hadn't told my family about because they had a gift for laughing at anything before it had the chance to become real. Casey, my older sister, was the queen of that. She was beautiful in that effortless way people forgive too quickly. She could walk into a room late, broke, and holding someone else's charger, and somehow everyone would ask if she needed anything. I loved her once in the automatic way little sisters love older sisters. Then I learned that love didn't stop someone from taking from you if they believed they deserved more. One Sunday evening, I came home after visiting Aaron out of state. I remember the house smelling like burnt toast and lemon cleaner. Mom's TV was loud in the living room. Casey was on the couch eating cereal from a mixing bowl, scrolling her phone like she had no worries in the world. I walked past her, dropped my bag in my room, and stopped. My desk looked naked. The monitor was gone. The tower was gone. My keyboard, my mouse, even the cheap speakers I'd taped together after one side cracked. Gone. For a second, my mind refused to understand the empty space. I actually looked under the desk, like a whole computer might be hiding there. Then I turned and walked back to the living room. "Where's my computer?" I asked. Casey didn't look up. "Oh, that? I sold it." The spoon kept moving to her mouth. The TV kept laughing. My chest went so tight I couldn't breathe right. "You what?" She sighed like I was interrupting her peace. "I sold it. You'll thank me later." "For what?" "For getting you unstuck," she said. "You were wasting your life on that thing. I used the money to pay bills and get my car fixed. We're family, Marina. It's basically a shared investment." That was Casey's gift. She could steal the roof over your head and call it weather protection. Mom came in halfway through and asked why I looked pale. When I told her, she glanced at Casey, then at me, and said, "Well, your sister has been stressed lately. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be." I stared at both of them and felt something inside me go still. Not calm, not forgiving. Still, like a door quietly locking. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the cereal bowl. I didn't demand the cash because I already knew there would be no cash. There would be excuses, then tears, then Mom telling me I was selfish for making Casey feel bad. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the empty corner where my PC had been. The missing glow made the room look abandoned. My first thought was how much work it would take to replace everything. My second thought was colder. One day, Casey would need me. Not Mom, not her friends, me. And when that day came, I wouldn't forget the phrase, shared investment. The next morning, I went to the electronics store and asked my manager for every extra shift he had. I smiled at customers who thought HDMI cables were Wi-Fi things. I carried boxes until my shoulders burned. I stayed late near the repair counter, asking questions until Carl, the grumpy, middle-aged technician who looked personally offended by every laptop ever made, finally let me watch him work. Within months, I could replace drives, diagnose fried boards, recover files from machines that sounded like haunted coffee grinders. People cried when I saved their photos. They hugged me when I recovered school projects, and every time, I understood. I knew what it felt like to lose a whole world because someone else treated it like junk. Casey never apologized. Sometimes she came into the store waving her phone, asking if I could recommend an app or charger, acting like the empty desk in my bedroom had been a misunderstanding we had all politely agreed not to mention. I didn't mention it either. I just worked. I saved. I learned. By the end of the first year, I had a new custom rig, better than the one she'd sold. But I didn't tell my family. By year 2, I had moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment, turned one room into a workshop, and left the store to repair computers and consoles full-time. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed. "Hey, my laptop's acting weird, freezing a lot. Can you take a look?" I stared at the message for a long moment. Then, I smiled. "Sure," I typed. "Bring it by tomorrow." The next morning, I woke up early, cleaned my apartment for no reason other than nerves, and made coffee strong enough to wake the dead. Casey hadn't visited me once since I moved out. Not on my birthday, not when I launched my repair business, not even when Mom accidentally mentioned I'd bought my own place. But suddenly, now that her laptop was dying, she remembered my address. My apartment was small but quiet, and that still felt luxurious to me. The second bedroom had become my workshop. Shelves lined with spare parts, toolkits arranged neatly, soft hum from test machines on the side counter. Every inch of that room existed because I rebuilt my life from the empty space she'd left behind. Before she arrived, I printed my updated rate sheet. I had standard pricing, rush pricing, emergency recovery pricing, and then there was a highlighted section I almost never used, triple rate multiplier. I circled it in yellow. At exactly 9:04 a.m., there was a knock at the door. Casey walked in, wearing oversized sunglasses even though it was cloudy outside, holding her laptop against her chest like it was an injured pet. "Wow," she said, glancing around. "This place is actually nice." "Actually nice." I smiled tightly. "Good morning to you, too." She ignored that and stepped farther inside without waiting for permission. "You've really upgraded since..." She stopped herself before saying it. "Since I sold your computer." The silence finished the sentence for her. I pointed toward the workbench. "Let's see the laptop." She placed it down dramatically. "It's been freezing non-stop. The fan sounds insane. I can barely work." I opened the lid and nearly laughed. Crumbs under the keys, sticky fingerprints all over the screen. A cooling vent clogged with enough dust to qualify as insulation. "When's the last time this thing was serviced?" I asked. She blinked. "Serviced?" "You know, cleaned, maintained." "Oh," she shrugged. "Never. I thought laptops just kind of lasted." I powered it on. The fan screamed immediately. "Yeah," I muttered. "This thing's fighting for its life." Casey leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone while I checked diagnostics. Same old Casey, completely relaxed while someone else fixed the consequences of her behavior. "So how long?" she asked. "Couple hours, probably." "That's fine," she smiled. "Family discount, right?" There it was. I almost laughed out loud. "Of course," I said calmly. "I'll send the invoice when it's done." She grinned, completely misunderstanding the tone in my voice. "Perfect. I owe you one." "No," I thought as she left. "You already owe me one." The second the door shut, I got to work. Honestly, the repair itself was easy. Dust-clogged cooling system, dying hard drive, outdated drivers, nothing complicated. Within a few hours, the machine ran smoother than new. The difficult part wasn't the repair. It was deciding exactly how petty I wanted to be. In the end, I opened my invoice template and carefully typed every charge line by line. Deep cleaning, hardware replacement, data transfer, driver optimization, rush turnaround. Then, at the bottom, family discount applied, triple rate multiplier. Total due, $360. I printed it, folded it neatly into an envelope, and placed it on top of the laptop. The next afternoon, Casey arrived practically glowing with confidence. She walked straight to the workbench and gasped when she saw the laptop. "Oh my God, it looks brand new." "It runs better too," I said. She opened it. The system booted in seconds. "Whoa," her eyebrows lifted. "Okay. Wow, you're actually really good at this." Actually. Again, I slid the envelope toward her. "Here's the invoice." She smiled casually while opening it, clearly expecting a symbolic little sibling charge. Then her face changed. Confusion first. Then disbelief. Then outrage. "Wait," she said slowly. "This says $360. Correct? For cleaning a laptop?" "For cleaning, replacing the hard drive, transferring data, optimizing the system, and emergency turnaround service," I corrected calmly. "Plus your family discount." She stared at me. "Family discount? Triple rate." Her jaw dropped. "That's not a discount. It is in this family." She blinked hard, like maybe I'd suddenly switched to joking. "Marina, seriously?" I leaned back in my chair. "Funny. That's exactly what I said when I came home and found my entire computer gone." Her expression darkened instantly. "Oh my God, you're still obsessed with that?" "Obsessed?" I repeated. "You sold thousands of dollars worth of equipment that I spent years building." "It was 2 years ago." "And?" She crossed her arms. "I told you why I did it." "Yeah," I said. "You called it an investment in the family." "It was!" I nodded toward the invoice. "This is the return on investment. Compounded interest." Her mouth actually opened for a second before shutting again. "You cannot be serious." "I'm extremely serious." Casey laughed once, sharp and angry. "We're family. You're supposed to help me." I tilted my head. "Interesting philosophy, considering you sold my property at full market value. That was different." "Sure," I said softly. "Difference is, I gave your laptop back." She switched tactics immediately, like she always did when guilt failed. "Do you know how much I've done for you growing up?" I thought about it carefully. Borrowing my bike and returning it 2 months later with different handlebars. Taking my jacket and giving it back, smelling like perfume I was allergic to. Eating food I bought while calling me dramatic for labeling it. "Yeah," I said. "Hard to repay all that generosity." Her eyes narrowed. "You're unbelievable." "Probably." She grabbed the laptop and held it protectively against her chest. "I'm not paying this." "That's your choice," I replied. "Invoices due in 7 days. Late payments add storage fees." Her face flushed bright red. "You know what? Forget it. I'm never asking you for anything again." I smiled politely. That would honestly save us both time. Casey stared at me another second, like she wanted me to apologize. When I didn't, she stormed toward the door, boots slamming against the hardwood floor. Right before leaving, she turned back. You're going to regret acting like this. I took a sip of coffee. Maybe. But at least nobody can sell my computer anymore. The door slammed so hard, the wall frame rattled. Then, silence. I sat there alone in my workshop, listening to the hum of my machines, and smiled. Because Casey had many talents, but letting things go quietly had never been one of them. It took less than 24 hours for the family group chat to explode. Mom said I was being petty. Uncle Tom called the invoice aggressive. Cousin Dave somehow used the argument to ask if I could fix his slow desktop. Casey, meanwhile, posted dramatic Facebook rants about toxic siblings and people who cared more about money than family. Funny part was, she never mentioned selling my PC in the first place. Then Mom and Casey showed up at my apartment together. Casey held an envelope with the money inside, but refused to hand it over unless I agreed to drop the whole thing and stop mentioning what she'd done. Like I was supposed to erase 2 years because she suddenly felt embarrassed. I refused. She left furious. 2 weeks later, an email landed in my business inbox. Urgent. Laptop dead. Need help ASAP. Casey again. Apparently, she had a major presentation the next morning, and the laptop froze completely. I replied with a professional invoice template. Priority emergency service, $1,080. Triple rate applied, family discount included. Payment required before repair begins. 7 minutes later, my phone rang. This is insane, she snapped. That's more than the laptop cost. And selling my PC cost me more than money, I replied calmly. She argued for another minute before hanging up on me. 20 minutes later, the payment notification came through. Every cent. When she arrived, I fixed the problem in under 15 minutes. Just a failing hard drive cable. Before handing the laptop back, I slid the receipt across the desk. Keep that, I said. Proof you paid triple. Her face turned crimson. She grabbed the laptop without another word and walked out. Later that night, Mom texted me. Was all this really necessary? I looked up at my workshop wall, where I'd framed the receipt beside my desk. Then I replied with a simple thumbs-up emoji. Because for the first time in our lives, Casey didn't get to control the ending of the story.